A trip on British Airways first class awaits, and not just any first class. First class in the superb A380 no less. I'll be there in a moment, but right now, all of this explains why I'm here at London Heathrow, again, the home of British Airways. No, not up that end though. No, we're not going to stand in any queues. It's a long walk down the pier of Terminal 5 to the decidedly exclusive right-hand wing, where there's a much more personalised experience. 13 million Londoners have to wake up to this every summer for a bucket and spade holiday, but we're going to walk straight through into the terminal. I was through security in a flash thanks to the new first wing at the far southern end of the terminal, which leads directly onto the gallery's first lounge via a private security aisle. With fast track for first and very few people using it mid-afternoon, I could go straight through to the Concorde Room. In fact, Heathrow didn't seem very busy at all, which I found surprising. Now, there are only two ways you can enter the British Airways Concorde Room. You either have a first-class British Airways ticket or be a British Airways Gold Guest List member. And that's it. The Concorde Lounge has had a revamp since it was built over a decade ago, and I'm pleased to say it generally remains an oasis of calm amid a busy terminal. When flying first, another passenger is hassle indeed, and the only real problem comes with the celebrities in the Concorde Lounge, who always seem to be a bit uneasy when somebody whips a camera out, and is then even more disappointed when they take a photo of their food or drinks rather than them. However, I wasn't here for the food or the seats, never mind how good they are. I was here for the fantastic wine list, with an added side serving of cocktails. After many decades of flying almost weekly around the globe in premium cabins, I thought I'd try a challenge to sample every wine on the menu in either the lounge or on board the A380, and also sample pretty much every cocktail if I could as well, purely to ensure they were of premium quality, you understand. Thankfully, the Concorde Room is adequately stocked, and I kicked off with a superb Cosmopolitan. Then straight onto the wine, with the Craggy Range Sauvignon Blanc from Hawke's Bay, down on the South Island. Grown on the lower terrace of the vineyard, this wine shows a unique level of texture and complexity. The cooler climate of Marlborough ensures the wine's very aromatic, while the rocky soils give intensity to the fruit. Now, plenty to look at in the lounge, including the famous Gordon's Tree Bell. Next up, sparkling wine. There were 3 served in the lounge, and I was determined to try the English variant, the Hattingley Valley sparkling wine from Alresford in Hampshire. The British Airways Blanc de Noir is light golden colour with a subtle green hue. As for the nose, it has hints of summer pudding in Winchester and freshly risen Itchen water. You can now dine on the balcony, although there are only 4 tables and it's quite hard to snag one, but it's worth it for the excellent views of the terminal and the hoi polloi below. I went for the giddy heights of British Airways English cuisine and plumped for the British Airways classic, the Concorde burger, with gherkins and chunky chips. Today I was pleased to see that BA have also had some Waldorfs in stock, so on the side I went for a Waldorf salad. The walnuts in it were some of the finest I've ever tasted in a salad. Down below there's, well, everyone else. Well, up here there's a corner of the Terminal 5 that is forever England and forever very serene, with free-flowing Laurent Perrier Grand Fraiche, which is quite acceptable and indeed a very quaffable bubbles, so long as somebody else is paying for it. The tasting note said it would please serious drinkers with its delicate balance of honeyed hazelnut flavours and offer the perfect balance between strength and delicacy. Still, I knew I had to keep on working my way through the wine list. Next up was the dessert wine with the Gießen Late Harvest Sauvignon Blanc, a delightful sweet wine, so sugary you can almost feel it peeling the enamel off your teeth. Anyway, after a few glasses of that, I was fortified to carry on my voyage. BA was going through another spate of cancellations today, but I was pleased when the staff came up to me and apologised that it was all down to COVID, but had high hopes that my flight today would actually be leaving. Alas, they warned it would depart from the Sea Gates, the one without a lounge, with a very long train ride. And indeed, it is a huge trek to the Sea Gates. British Airways, alas, doesn't have a lounge at London Heathrow Seagate. It used to offer free-flowing moe for passengers in first at the Starbucks, but alas, that unique non-lounge feature has been enhanced out of existence. It's such a mind-bogglingly long way, you won't believe just how far it is to get to the Seagates, which are of course at a remote location and only accessible by train or walking through the deep level tunnel and then back up again. Once at the Seagates, the aircraft looked as if it was ready for boarding. Alas, staffing issues meant they just couldn't determine exactly when. And indeed, at the gate, soon it was clear it was all going pear-shaped. Everybody was waiting for an hour or so at the gate and then waited some more. Finally, the staff on the gate warned their supervisor that their shift finished at 5:30, so they were going home, and that threw a spanner in the works, so new crew had to be called. If I'd known there would be a huge delay, I'd have walked back through the deep level tunnel back to the B lounge, but the new staff said the wait would only be a few more minutes, and then called everybody forward who had 4 S's on their boarding card. And there was another delay of half an hour while they had all their luggage searched in the small holding area by the gate. Trust me, you don't want 4 S's on your boarding card, or you'll find out you've gone on holiday by mistake. Now, what surprised me, as soon as it was clear we really were going to board, was the incredible bun fight by some passengers to get on board the A380. If I'd known about the delay, I'd have waited in the lounge, but many in the cheap seats back in business seemed desperate to get on board. When I could, I finally joined fast-track boarding. However, fast-track seemed to include pretty much half of the A380, since it included all first and business class passengers, as well as silver and gold executive club members, and anybody else who seemed to have a One World card as well, certainly in the upper tiers. I proceeded to board down what must be the world's longest jet bridge, but a couple behind me overtook me on the jetway. They were clearly desperate to enjoy Club World. Finally, missing an hour and a half of good wine tasting time, and having found I had of late lost all of my mirth, I got on board. And there we go, that's what we've been waiting for. It's a first-class cabin on British Airways A380. Now, the first cabin of the A380 always seems quite empty on British Airways, with only 4 seats on the side and an absence of bling, unlike some carriers from the Gulf, which always makes it cleaner and quietly sophisticated. There are 4 first-class suites by the windows and 3 pairs there in the middle of the cabin. The crew were busy pouring champers in the galley and rushed over asking if I'd like a glass. I'm assuming that was a rhetorical question.
Once your hand baggage is stowed, please keep the aisles clear for all our remaining customers to join us on board. We invite you to make yourselves comfortable and tune into our highlight entertainment, which is now available to enjoy. Thank you.
The crew came around to offer pyjamas and an amenity kit, plus headphones, blankets, and a pillow. The seat itself is great, with a light for attracting attention when you're reading the cocktail list. There's an excellent amenity kit, and see, it's even marked first, so you know where you are, and it must be good. It comes with basic toothbrush, razor, socks, eye shades, and a very fluffy pair of socks. There are some lovely tubes of Elmis goodies, including moisturizer, shaving gel, lip balm, a comb, a packet of tissues, but first-class tissues, and the most useful of things on a long-haul flight, a miniature tube of deodorizer. There's also an eye shade, again marked first. It makes all the difference. The crew were very obsequious and came round to introduce themselves again and offered another glass of champagne. There was one other goodie in the bag, which you just can't get anywhere else. It's British Airways' famous silver first-class pen. This opulent symbol of wealth is one of the best things BA can give you on the plane, and for years to come, quietly signals to those in the know that you've been up front. It's free for those who can afford it, and very expensive to those who can't. Pyjamas and slippers, or what is now called loungewear no less, are also on offer, and very good they are too. There are excellent noise-reducing headphones for cutting out the sound of the whining behind you, probably back in Club World. Of course, they, like pretty much everything else on board, are British. Made by the leaders in high-end audio industry, Meridian Audio, who developed them in Cambridgeshire, way out in the Fens. Now, time for a bit of an explore, and I wanted to see what the cabins were like up and behind me. BA has 3 business class cabins, or what is colloquially known as Club World. It's upstairs, downstairs, 2 club cabins upstairs with 4 rows apiece, and a larger one downstairs with 6 rows in a 242 layout, and half of the seats facing backwards. Downstairs in economy class or World Traveller, it has a standard 343 layout, 31 inches of pitch, flip-out video screens in the front row. And they even still feed you back there in economy.
Very pleased to announce everyone on board the aircraft now reliably informed. Just the very last couple of bags are going into the rear cargo hold. Running about 30 minutes or so behind our scheduled time of departure at the moment. It took slightly longer than usual to prepare this aircraft for service in terms of getting the catering, cleaning, and there was some maintenance required as well. But pleased to say that's now all done. We should be departing in the next 5 or 10 minutes. Once we get our clearance from air traffic control, we'll be pushing back, start the engines, taxi to take off down the far end of the airfield today, so probably 20 minutes or so of taxi time, and then we're taking off in a westerly direction away from London, turning right after departure to route northbound initially.
Beside the seat is a little cubby with a remote and charging ports for your laptop, so you can charge your computer while editing a video. Much quieter up front, and the crew had topped up my glass. Again. The poo on board is the Laurent Perrier, not a bad drop. At this point I realised I might just survive. Indeed, the crew were very cheery and seemed happy to have customers in the first class cabin.
We'll climb up to 34,000 feet as our initial cruising altitude. Very quick flight time today of 7 hours and 20 minutes there or thereabouts. So we are anticipating arriving into Washington almost around about our scheduled time of arrival. Conditions en route look fine and smooth. You'll be able to follow our progress on the in-flight sky map on the entertainment system. However, that being said, we do recommend keeping seatbelts loosely fastened at all times whilst you are seated. And if at any point the seatbelt sign does go on, it will be for good reason, so please do ensure that you're securely strapped in during those times and the washrooms will be out of use. Weather waiting for us at the other end in Washington looks like a very pleasant evening. Light wind, scattered clouds. But I'll update you a little bit more on that as we get closer to our destination. In the meantime, I think the team in the cabin, your in-flight manager is Sergio Gambardella, and I know he and the rest of the 21 cabin crew will be doing all they can to make your time with us safe and pleasant. So as I say, underway shortly. Please now make yourselves comfortable. I shall endeavour not to disturb you en route with any further announcements, but as we get closer to Washington, I shall update you on our progress. Do enjoy the flight, thanks.
Cabin crew, prepare for manual safety demonstration. We will now demonstrate the safety features of this aircraft. Your attention is essential, as this may differ from any aircraft you have flown before.
There are a total of 14 first-class seats, 4 seats on each side alongside the window, and the cabin feels very spacious. I like it when it takes up the entire space between doors 1 and 2, so it feels like it has a good bit of privacy. If you're travelling alone, then of course you'll want to select one of these single seats which face the window, and while the seats aren't cutting edge, British Airways has done a good job with the mood lighting and the ambience.
items in the lockers carefully as they may fall out any inches or more. In the case of evacuation, you must move quickly to the closed but usable exit, taking nothing with you. Ensure now that your seat is upright in the takeoff position, with the armrest down and your table is folded away. If you have a full stall or a video screen, please store this now.
Now today we're taking off on 27 right. Here's those lovely Rolls-Royce Trent 900 spool up, although actually you can't hear much of them. The forward cabin is so quiet.
Good afternoon, my name is Sergio Campardella, in-flight manager. It is my pleasure to welcome you all on board today. A special welcome to those of you returning from our safety club and those of you joining from our on-board alliance partners. I remind you to keep your seatbelt securely fastened whenever you are seated. When opening your lockers, please take care as items have moved to call for out to cause injury. If seated in first or club hold, please take care of your personal electronic devices when adjusting your seat. If your device does get lost beneath your seat area, please don't move the seat and let one of the cabin crew know. To connect and join the BA Wi-Fi network, visit shop.ba.com to discover the packages available. All phones should be placed to silent to avoid disturbing other customers. Please note video and phone calls are not permitted at any time during the flight. We're about to start our on-board service. If you have any food allergy...
Okie dokie, there we go, into the climb, turning right and heading for Milton Keynes as I settle into the deep, wide, squashy armchair that BA offer up in first. Now, I've got to say, British Airways first class seats are essentially just glorified reverse herringbone seats, but they're good. At each seat there's an ottoman which can double as a buddy seat, so you can dine with somebody face to face if you really want to. Now, this is the reason why we're here. It's to try some of the finest wines known to humanity. The crew knew I wanted them here, and I wanted them now. The glossy tray table folded out from the right side of the seat. It's massive when fully extended, although you could also just fold it over in half. But the cabin was intensely cold. I don't know how cold it can be in first. It's like Greenland in here. I had to have some cocktails if I was going to warm up enough to try the wine list. I started off with the Red Snapper cocktail. This has gin, tomato juice, and the most English of sauces, Liam Perrins. There are 7 cocktails on the list to try as we go on through the flight. And to compare the snapper, I put it up against a classic Bloody Mary cocktail, just with vodka and tomato juice. I was delighted to confirm that both were of excellent quality, but the crew apologised for not having any cut glass tumblers, and I had to borrow a glass from back in business. Now, I went through British Airways' in-flight entertainment system, and it's as good as ever with a pleasing number of new releases and British films, some of which I hadn't come across before. It is, however, just a little bit old school, with a 15-inch TV screen, and it's noticeably a bit slower than many of the newer systems. It's also not overly touch sensitive. It does work if you press the screen hard enough, and 15 years ago would have been very much cutting edge. Nowadays, however, it's like going back a decade, as indeed are some of the films. There's an excellent archive in there, and even, yes, the test of a good BA film selection with Nell and I. New releases are equally good. You just have to plug in your headphones, and that drowns out any of the noise from the cabin. Time for dinner, and time to browse the volumes of the menu. And after cocktails, it's canapé time, and British Airways have prepared a beetroot. But not just any beetroot, oh no, this is a BA First beetroot. As we headed over Huddersfield, I tucked into my beetroot, and I tell you what, it's nowhere near as bad as I expected it to be. The roasted baby beetroot in lemon yogurt with pistachio had subtle purple flavours. There was also a humus-filled pepper and a bowl of marinated olives with chopped up cheddar cheese. The pepper was quite humorous, and best of all were the olives. These were no Sainsbury's basic olives, but olives plucked from the fields of Tuscany and ferried by serfs to British Airways headquarters at Waterworld to be gently carried into the rarefied atmosphere of the front cabin. To complement British catering at its best, I hunted for the fine English wine. BA recommend the English Hattonley Valley from Hampshire to go with the canapés. It's a superb drop. Heading over Cumbria now, and I had the chance to admire BA's cutlery. In first, the spanners go well with the crockery. A little too bright for me though. British Airways has blinds that can automatically be lowered by the push of a button. Next up, starters, and I wondered if they got soup. Why don't I get any soup? The plebs in business get soup, but no, it's prawns, carrot salad, or burrata. It's like mozzarella, but with a delicate taste, more elastic texture. Burrata is softer and more flavourful. BA serve it on a bed of figs with truffle honey. It looks a bit minging, but the outer casing is solid cheese. Now, BA will do a full wine tasting if you ask, pouring a glass of every bottle on board so you can taste which one is the best. First up is the Crazy Creatures White Burgundy, a white wine from Austria. The grapes are crushed by peasants in a small village called Pult, a traditional family-owned wine estate since 1722. It's spicy and herbal, but also has a fruity aroma with a crisp, fresh acidity. I contrasted it with the Vavasour Sauvignon Blanc from Marlborough in New Zealand. With delicate grapefruit flavours, it's a meticulously made wine with grapes selected for intensity and concentration. The food kept on coming without a pause, and there are a couple of British classics on the menu: tikka masala or a rack of lamb with chateau potatoes or gratin. The roast lamb had leek sauce, potatoes, runner beans, broccolini and baby carrots, and there's a certain je ne sais quoi also special about a firm young carrot, which goes perfectly with the kale, coriander in a side bowl. A very good leek too, leaking nearly as well as the Whitehall department, pulped into a creamy sauce. And what goes well with leeks? Well, wine, of course. The reds were a bit pedestrian on this flight, but the Chateau Lavarat Haut Adrien from Bordeaux in France was absolutely top-notch. The Pinot Noir from California, it's got an appealing dark colour and aroma of stewed orange rind and Portobello market. Indeed, by this point my dining table was littered with half-drunk glasses, so it looked like I was out on the lash, so I decided it was time to cleanse my palate with port and cheese. After all, still a bit parky out in the cabin, so I needed a bit of a warm-up. The cheese board comes with Oxford Blue, which is a full-fat Stilton-type blue cheese. There's also Driftwood Goat's Cheese, College White Brie, and Godminster Cheddar, which was absolutely lush. Talking of which, there's Waz Port from 2009 from the Douro Valley in Portugal. The dessert is the chocolate and sea salt caramel tower. Again, to avoid it looking like I was having a right old knees up, I carefully selected my wine to go with the caramel and selected the Hungarian. Dessert wine is the Royal Tokaj Blue Label from Hungary. The light, sweet crude is so wonderfully sugary, you can almost feel the treacle flavours peeling the enamel off your teeth. It was very good indeed. Right, we're halfway over the pond, and time for 40 winks. You just rotate your knob beside your seat, and the seat ever so sophisticately turns into a fully flat bed, over 2 meters long. That's over 6 feet in old money, and I needed it because I was certainly getting quite tired, indeed as tired as a newt. If you're sitting comfortably, then I'll begin by expecting you, like me, enjoyed a great snooze over the Atlantic thanks to BA First Class. My head was no longer numb, so feeling refreshed, scrubbed up nicely and ready to get cracking on the second cocktail service, to wake up, I went for the Gin Zing cocktail. Really lovely and refreshing. It has citrus and sparkling water over ice, plus gin, of course. Good Hampshire Bombay Sapphire. Only an hour or so left of the flight, so for the second meal service I went for the light bites menu. In first class, this is typically a lighter option you can have after takeoff, but if you're still hungry later in the flight, you can have it for second dinner. I kicked off with starters of the prosciutto ham with ricotta and grilled courgettes. Great ham, shame about the courgettes, which were chunky enough to almost be called marrows, and as for the garnish, seems to be clinging to the plate for dear life. Now the crew don't mind, indeed they quite enjoy it, if you create your own cocktails. So I changed the classic BA Mule cocktail and added orange juice to the vodka, ginger ale and ice. Got to get a bit of vitamin C, you see. It looked like a right bodged job, but it was cracking. Lovely bread rolls, proper butter and olive oil, and look, in first class, BA even placed on the table proper salt and pepper shakers. We're nearly on finals, but the crew said there was just time for a full main course, if I was quick. I went for a cliched bit of old blighty, the British roasted chicken. Potato mousseline, which is basically mash, plus truffle and rosemary juice, all with asparagus right on top. It was really very good indeed. I can see why many passengers in first chose this lighter meal as their main course. I was pleased also that it was well cooked. I can just never touch meat until it's well done. Indeed, as a youth, I used to weep in butcher's shops. Just time for yet another cocktail before we land. A beach-bound cocktail, no less. With vodka, cranberry juice and lemonade, it made me feel as if we were heading on holiday by mistake. Only a few more minutes until we land, but I had to try the dessert. No time for cheese, so I went straight onto the mango lime and citrus creme fraiche. It was brilliant, really enjoyed that. While we were heading into Washington, I tried out the in-flight Wi-Fi. And I was pleased to see that not only do BA offer full, uncapped and unlimited free Wi-Fi for first-class passengers, it also works. Furthermore, it's really fast and some of the fastest I've had on a plane. Quite incredible. Now the sky is beginning to bruise. Night must fall and we're going to be forced to land soon, but there was still time for another couple of bottles of wine before we put wheels on the tarmac. Looking around the first class cabin on the A380, it's always a pleasure to be here, although I've noticed some sharply marked differences of opinion between passengers. You certainly don't get the type of reverential service some Gulf airlines offer, but always prefer the BA crew, who, if you get a good crew, always make it seem like a special experience, but one you can relate to. And this crew were very jolly indeed. By now, it was getting lovely and dusky as we approached Washington. Very, very clear, and it made it possible to see the river and the city. And indeed, there we go. We're getting in, close to the runway. And indeed, it looks as if we're about 5 minutes ahead of schedule.
So 50, maybe 60 miles, subject to air traffic control, to run before touching down on the southerly facing runways at Dulles. That should take us just about 40 minutes time from now. So landing around about 20, maybe 25 past the hour. And local time in Washington is 5 hours behind that in the UK. So that's going to be around about 20 past 7 in the evening. We've been helped along by some good tailwinds en route, and so pleased to say that we've made up most of that today that we picked up leaving London. So we should be on stand maybe just 5 or 10 minutes adrift of our scheduled time of arrival. Weather much as you can see out the window, so largely clear skies. Temperature on the ground at the moment 23 degrees, and that is obviously dropping as we head towards evening. And very light winds, so very pleasant evening in store. I would advise making use of this time to gather your belongings and use the washrooms before the seatbelt signs go on for landing. And do dress you comfortable, enjoy the rest of the flight, thank you.
There is a seatback TV screen, but the televisions are folded out from the center section and have to be stowed for takeoff and landing, meaning you can't watch anything during those phases of the flight. This flight to Washington was pretty empty, with just 3 other passengers in first, and that made the cabin seem huge. Compared to BA's new business class, the area around the seat has been significantly increased, providing a stowage cubbyhole right next to you. There's a large wardrobe as well at the side of the seat, which can take a standard size roller case. And here we are at Washington Dulles International Airport, which is pretty much one of the last airports in the world to use people movers, or what it calls mobile lounges, to get you from the aircraft and gate up to arrivals. Alas, the growth in passenger numbers has made it really impractical to use mobile lounges for pretty much all the flights, and indeed you have to try very hard indeed to be one of the very few gates where it's still used. That's just how old school it is. However, a few of the older D gates still use this wonderful 1960s concept of a complete gate on wheels. It's old, it's tired, but then again there can be no true beauty without decay. So there we go, on the ground, looking around the cabin. Got to be said, these seats don't have great privacy, but I do note that the seats are staggered a bit, so you're never seated directly next to somebody opposite the aisle. Seat controls, they're really easy to use, and they're just to the right of the seat. There's a knob you use which reclines your seat or put it back up. It literally just goes up or down, which I quite like, and the lighting around it is good as well. It's green when you're good to go for takeoff and landing, otherwise BA blue. You can also control the lighting from this panel. So I made it out of the airport after only an hour and a half at immigration, which is pretty good indeed. Would I recommend travelling on British Airways in first class? Well, yes, of course, definitely. British Airways in particular really surpassed itself this time with superb food. The free ultra-fast Wi-Fi is great, there are good films on board, and as for starting off the journey at the Concorde Room Lounge, that really is absolutely superb. To be honest, I wasn't expecting a lot from British Airways on this flight, but I got a lot, and more. And as for Washington, would I recommend a trip to Washington? Well, yes, but the city is very, very far away from the airport, and if you take public transport, you have to catch a local bus for miles before it meets up with the city metro. A minor problem though, I really enjoyed the flight. Is it worth the price tag though? Well, only you can answer that.